Hello, this is Don Hall. This is at Don Hall Works YouTube channel, and I am in Wailuku, Maui, and with my new friend Jen Selwyn, and she's going to do a demo for us. So, aloha.
Aloha.
And why don't you go ahead and explain just real briefly what you're going to show us.
So what I'm going to show you today is a variation of Mokume-gane. I learned Mokume-gane from Dean McRyan from Lightwave Pottery on Kauai and his team there. And I've just kind of adapted it to work in the way I want it to work.
Great.
I've only been doing it since March, so we'll see how this goes.
All right.
Mokume-gane is a pottery decorating technique that is a reinvention of an ancient Japanese metalworking process of the same name. Jen uses very thin sheets of colored clay and stamps to create her amazing multicolored pottery.
So this is chartreuse clay. I use stoneware clay. I've just started using white bear clay from Kentucky Mudworks, and found it keeps the color nice and I don't have to deal with porcelain. And so what we're going to do with this piece of clay is we're going to roll it out super thin to just above 0. So got to readjust this a little bit.
So you add mason stains to it, right?
Add mason stains to it. So I break up my clay, actually dry it out, and then I reconstitute it with water so that it becomes slip, and then I'll blend it to get it smooth, and then I will add mason stain. I do small batches. I do fourth of a pound of mason stain to 2.5 pounds of wet slip, and I mix that up and then dry it out until it's workable. So here first. These can get unwieldy sometimes. Smaller one is better. Go 8. Direction, then I'm going to turn it very carefully. If I was working with smaller mat, I could have just flipped the mat, but the other way. And now is where I'll go to just above 0. I don't know what that would be, 1/32 or something. This chartreuse was a lot wetter than the other colors that I was working with, so hopefully it doesn't stick too terribly bad, or not too bad. One of the only issue that I've had with slab mats with this is if they get too damp, then they tend to stick. Thank you. And then I gotta put this over on my stack here very carefully. This is why I like to work smaller. For some people, they like to have the piece completely whole, worried about pukas or holes in the clay, but I'm actually going to disassemble it anyway, so I'm not terribly worried. I have found for my best results 3 to 4 layers of color, and then the base, which some people use white. I like to use a colored also base, and then but to get more color, I kind of do like a splotch effect with mine. Now I'm going to roll out a thicker slab. Probably about a 1/2 inch thick. I swear I wish I had the different slab roll. Okay. So with colored clay, especially if you're going to use porcelain, you want to make sure you're keeping it moist. My problem here in Hawaii is, yes, I have humidity, but I also have to have fans on so I don't melt, and that tends to dry things out a little bit. So I'm going to keep it nice and moist. I could square this off, but for what I'm making, I don't need it to be squared off. So this is my base color, and I'm doing this on some of my pieces. I have designed front and back so that it looks like the color goes straight through, and then I'll have like thin layer of white in between to laminate it together. But on this one, I'm just going to do it so that it's blue on the back side and the design is on the front side. And this base color is a mixture of robin's egg blue and white, kind of so that it looks like clouds. And my next color that I want to put on here, I want a big contrast with light and dark. So I'm going to go with this blue, dark blue color. And I don't care if it falls apart a little bit. But I do want it no air bubbles as much as possible. And I go ahead and wrap it around the sides, because when I roll it out thinner, if I don't do that, then I end up with a lot of blank space. That's giving it too much texture. I like to use these smooth linen towels. Something that gives it a smoothish surface helps. The reason I put the towel over before I roll it with the roller is so that the color doesn't transfer to my little pony roller. This was that piece that fell apart. Ideally, you know, I would have done this in one piece, but make it work. So I learned a variation of this technique, if I didn't say this before, from Dean McRine. Dean does Nirikomi. He's located in Kapaha on Kauai. And this last workshop I took with him, he also took a day to show us how to do this Mokume-gane. And this is a variation of that. And I have fun doing this. I feel like I'm a real artist doing this. So I'm just going to keep layering my different colors. See what other colors I have here. I have a purple, and a watermelon, a yellow, and the chartreuse. Here, one piece. And do a mixture of the purple and the red for interest. So I don't want to get too many layers that I never get down to having a background color. Whoops. Make sure I do. Create a little bit of a slip there for this to stick to. I kind of want it to be kind of a patchwork so that it's either camo-ish or whatever you want to call it. Really, a third color would have been nice for this. The chartreuse is going to go on top. Now, part of my idea of doing this, going this route with the colored clay, is I was searching for something that made me feel more artistic than just being a potter. Love pottery. I think it's art. When people ask me what I do, I do say I am an artist, but I felt like I wanted to do something one of a kind, more original type thing. So I decided to try something new, and I think every artist should try something new every so often. And I'm really enjoying this. I'm finding my aloha back. And so I've named this series Seeking Aloha. It's looking pretty funny. So we have one last layer, and then we're going to stamp it with stamps. And I use stamps that I got from De La Designs. They make these wonderfully 3D printed designs. I know Jean uses old batik stamps from India and lace, various different things. This time I'm getting a lot of air bubbles in here, so I'm going to try and get rid of those real quick. And I try and just poke the one layer that has the air bubbles, not all the way through. Otherwise, I'll be pushing down the color, which that's what I'm going to do eventually, but I want to do it with the stamps, not with my needle tool. Okay, so all this extra scrap that I have, I will recycle and reuse because making colored clay is hard and not cheap, so you want to keep as much as you can. For other projects. Ready? I'm going to go from the center out, try to get those air bubbles to go away. Let me see a couple, so that's good. Okay. Oops. Stop. So now the fun begins. I'm going to roll this just ever so slightly on the slab roller again to get it a little bit thinner, but not as thin as my final project because we have to stamp it yet. So if you remember, it was the light blue color was a 1/2 inch thick, and now I've added on colors, but I've only added on what 1/32 in layers, so really didn't add that much on, so I'm not really going to change the thickness that I'm rolling. I just want to make sure they're nice and adherent, and also maybe get rid of some bubbles. Hopefully. Yes! Looks lovely. Ooh, got bug. Living in Hawaii, that's my biggest guts and gecko poop. But they add variation to my design. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stamps and I'm going to stamp this all over. Then I'm going to roll it out to almost 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to remove the top few layers by scraping. And scraping will hopefully reveal the pattern. So what we're going to use today, it's my favorite thing to use to make impressions, are these stamps that I got from De La Designs, and she 3D prints this. She also does cutters and things like that, but I absolutely love her stamps, and I decided to do flowers and dragonflies today, and I have different sizes, and we're just going to randomly press these in. And you're going to be rolling this out bigger. So remember, if you have the big butter or dragonfly, it's going to get even bigger. So So if you have an end project in mind before doing this, keep that in mind, how big you want your dragonflies to be or object. I also have turtles and hibiscus flowers. And so what's going to happen when I start scraping layers off is I'm going to lose most of the chartreuse color, but down where it's deep pressed, that chartreuse should stay if I do it correctly. Now I cover the whole surface with texture. Some of it's going to stay, some of it might disappear. And it's possible, depending on how it turns out when I start scraping, I might have to stamp some more. And that's okay, because then I will have different colored dragonflies. Okay. And back together some of these things so that color goes down in there a little bit more. All right, so we're going to have the blue on the bottom, the colors on the top, and we are going to roll this once again. So this time we're going to roll it very slowly though, which is a little bit monotonous, but that's how it works. Because you don't want to completely ruin your design. So probably like less than 1/8 of an inch at a time. And then I'm gonna turn this to go the other direction so I don't distort the images too much. So I am gonna be right at 1/4 of an inch. My pieces tend to be less than 1/4 inch. I know traditional pottery is usually 1/4 inch thick. I tend to go slightly under that for weight. And for this stage, it's important to have a spray bottle and extra water set aside because you're going to need lots of water. A container with water to rinse your rib off with. A metal rib, the wider the better, but you want smooth edge. And something that you don't mind, you're going to be putting a lot of scrap in this. And then lots of towels. Unless you like to wipe on yourself like I usually do. So I'm going to get this whole thing wet and see the design appear already. And I'm just going to this is a lengthy process. So I keep all this mess, this slop here, because I can use it eventually for something. Hate to waste it. Maybe do some agate ware or marbling or something with it.
That's amazing. I've never seen anything quite like this before.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I mean, and you just keep going until you like it. I know some people use white at the top layer because they are going to really take off from pretty much all the top layer. I like to use color. This area. Now I'm getting through that chartreuse, and I'm starting to get into some of the other colors over in this corner over here. And I may keep that chartreuse over there. One thing you want to make sure you do is spray and clean off your scraping tool between the scrapes, because otherwise you just end up with a muddy mess. I could always go back in and stamp a little bit more. So one thing to keep in mind as you're scraping, you're also pulling on this, so it's thinning your clay out as well. See, now you're starting to see all the different layers in there. Worried that I'm losing some of the design. I'm not really. I have a lot here, but I just want to add a little bit extra. I'm going to stamp a little more, and that might give it more dimension, but also I got to be careful I don't go too thin that I go through, because now it's thinner and it's wetter. Well, we're going to stop here, and later on, once it sets up a little bit, I'm going to take a piece of saran wrap and place it over the top of this, and then I'm going to use one of the cutters from De La Designs to cut out a large sushi plate. I'll orient it my favorite way. I want the design to show the best design, and then I will take that and put it over a slump mold. I usually use GR pottery forms or forms from Europe that I got, and that will make a beautiful sushi plate. And
Thank you, Jen. These are greenware ready to be fired.